a couple of days after the Portuguese Grand Prix, the Coca-Cola company launched a new formulation of its signature drink, dubbed New Coke, as a reaction to losing market share to Pepsi, as well as their own new brands Diet Coke and Cherry Coke. Market research had suggested that customers preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi, so Coca-Cola was reformulated, and the taste test showed the new recipe performed better than not only Pepsi, but the original recipe. Despite all this, there was a huge backlash, especially in the southern US, where Coca-Cola was part of the regional identity. After about 3 months, the original recipe was reintroduced as Coca-Cola Classic alongside New Coke, and quickly regained its market share and then some, increasing sales at more than twice the rate of Pepsi. New Coke, renamed Coke 2 in 1992, was not actually discontinued until 2002, by which time it was actually very difficult to find anywhere, and in 2009 the Classic tag finally disappeared from Coca-Cola packaging. The New Coke affair has become one of the most famous examples of a spectacular corporate error, and naturally has spawned a number of conspiracy theories to boot. The World Snooker Championship ended at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield, with defending champion Steve Davis taking on Northern Irish veteran Dennis Taylor. Davis won the first 8 frames, and it looked like he would win easily, but Taylor fought back to make it 17-17 with 1 frame to go, which in turn came down to the very last ball. Whoever potted the black would win the title. Taylor missed, but left the ball in an awkward spot. Davis returned the favour. Then Taylor missed again, this time leaving it pottable by Davis, who missed again, leaving an opening for Taylor, who missed.
No.
Davis tried what should have been an easy shot, and missed. Finally, Taylor potted the ball to win the title. It became known as the Black Ball Final, and by the final frame, word had got around and 18.5 million British viewers were sitting up after midnight to watch it, a record audience for any sporting event at that time. Snooker had already been reasonably popular on TV before then, but the tension of the Black Ball Final catapulted it into a national obsession for the remainder of the 80s and into the early 90s. The 30th Eurovision Song Contest was held at Gothenburg in Sweden, with the winner of the first contest from 1956, Lise Assia, as guest of honour. Norway won the contest with the song La Det Swinger by Bobby Sox. It was the first win for the country, which had come last on 6 previous occasions, on 2 of which in 1978 and 1981 they'd scored no points at all. And the date of the San Marino Grand Prix coincided with the 40th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe, and saw President Reagan involved in something of a controversy. Visiting a German war cemetery in Bitburg with West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, it emerged that of the 2,000 graves, 49 were of members of the Waffen-SS. An American delegation had scouted out the site a few months earlier, but heavy snow cover had hidden many of the graves and it hadn't been picked up. News had emerged in the US a couple of weeks earlier, and Reagan was under pressure to cancel, but feared this would damage his friend and ally Kohl, so in the end the visit went ahead, but the pair also made an unscheduled stop at the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. While all this was going on north of the Alps, at the Imola circuit near Bologna in Italy, the Formula One circus was setting up. The Minardi team had their new car with its Carlo Chiti-designed Motori Moderni engine, a 1.5-litre V6 turbo, in the back, and were hoping it would make a difference, though those in the know reckoned it was already a slightly outdated design, a second-generation unit, while the Tag, Renault, Ferrari and Honda engines were on the third. Spirit had finished rebuilding Baldi's car and updated it to D-spec, marked with a new red, white and blue paint job. Alfa Romeo had 4 cars in attendance, 2 with new electronic ignition and fuel injection systems and 2 without, while Azella had their new FA1G chassis ready for Ginzani. Fuel consumption was going to be an issue here, with large portions of the circuit taken flat out, and teams were trying to figure out how much boost they could get away with during practice and qualifying sessions. Provisional pole position was passed around between Senna, Alboreto, Rosberg and Prost, with a bumper crowd in on Saturday to see championship leader Michele Alboreto take it. Only he didn't. In fact, the Ferraris were only 14th and 15th fastest on Saturday. Instead, on pole for the second race running was Ayrton Senna, with Keke Rosberg alongside, then De Angelis, who had set a great time in the spare Lotus, and Alboreto in 4th. Thierry Boutsen turned a few heads by putting the Arrows 5th ahead of Alain Prost, with the other Arrows 10th and Mansell, Lauda and Piquet in between them. The Renaults were in all sorts of trouble in 11th and 14th, Johansson could only manage 15th in the other Ferrari, and Eno's practice was rather compromised by him testing a new onboard camera. The new Minardi meanwhile looked much better, running comfortably in the top 20 throughout and qualifying 19th ahead of the second Brabham. On race day, despite Johansson's rather lacklustre performance so far, there were encouraging signs for him around the circuit, while René Arnoux was seen hanging around the Brabham pit. It had rained overnight and the track was still a little damp, but not enough to affect racing. When the lights went green, Senna got away well, Rosberg not so much, and it was the two Loti once again leading into Tamburello, with Alboreto hot on De Angelis' heels, then Prost, Rosberg and Mansell. By the end of the lap, Alboreto had dropped back a little, and Prost was crawling all over him, while Jonathan Palmer once again coasted into the pits to retire, this time with a failure of his Zaxpeed engine. The two Loti continued to lead comfortably, with De Angelis sticking close to Senna and keen to reassert himself as team leader after Senna's maiden win in Portugal. Alboreto was third and staying in touch, with Prost still looking for a way past, and these top four were rapidly leaving fifth-placed Rosberg behind. There was a quick flurry of early broken engines, with Patrese and Berger dropping out after 4 laps, then Beloff and Eno after 5, the latter in a really awkward spot. The second Brabham had had a TV camera installed for live pictures, but had retired before any had been broadcast. Lauda had by now got past Rosberg and was trying to catch the leaders, as Prost had a go at Alboreto to no avail, with the Italian nearly pushing him onto the grass in response. A couple of laps later, De Angelis seemed to drop back a little from Senna, and Alboreto surged past at Tosa to a roar from the crowd. Just as in Portugal, it seemed that Michele had caught Andrea napping, and as they came up to lap Mauro Baldi, having electrical trouble which was about to make him retirement number 6, Alboreto charged off in pursuit of Senna, while De Angelis had to defend against Prost. Not for long though, as Prost got past easily enough, and the number 11 Lotus began to drop back. All 4 of the leaders had been running very hard on tyres so far, and all were showing a bit of graining. Andrea de Cesaris had already been in for a bit of damage repair, claiming brake problems, and ended up in a tyre wall at Tosa after 11 laps. Meanwhile, Senna continued to lead Alboreto and Prost closely, with De Angelis dropping back rapidly and quickly being caught by Lauda. Piquet had made his way up to 6th, but came in for new Pirellis early on, while a charging Johansson off camera had fairly carved up through the field and was now 7th behind Rosberg. While the cameras understandably focused on the top 3, Lauda got past De Angelis and began to close in on them, while Johansson and Rosberg were having an almighty battle over the last point. By the time the cameras found them, the Swede had just made it stick and was beginning to pull away, with some 20 seconds to make up on De Angelis. Meanwhile, the top 3 were still going at it hammer and tongs. Great stuff to watch as Alboreto alternated between attacking Senna and defending against Prost, and Lauda closed in on the 3 of them. On lap 23, the number 27 Ferrari seemed to slow, and Prost managed to force his way past. Shortly afterwards, Lauda too blasted past, and Alboreto was left to splutter back to the pits with some electrical trouble causing a misfire. Rosberg also disappeared around the same time with a similar problem, and Lafitte lit up his Ligier like a barbecue and calmly parked up. Alboreto's disappearance gave Senna a bit of breathing room, and he put his foot down to try and maintain a gap from Prost, who had Lauda behind him now, and behind them, Johansson was now up to 4th, Piquet had made his way back up to 5th, and Mansell was 6th. Lauda had an off-camera spin at the start of the pit straight when his gear jumped, dropping him back but not losing him too much time. Without the need to check his mirrors, Prost rapidly closed up on Senna and began to harry him for the lead. The young Brazilian, second youngest driver in the race, chopped through the back markers as he tried to keep the Frenchman behind, first Ghinzani in the new Azella, then his old F3 rival Martin Brundle, who'd had a nasty shunt on Saturday morning, and as he approached Tombé's Renault, Prost was really all over the back of the Lotus. Senna managed to get past Tombé at the perfect moment, leaving Prost unable to go through for several corners. By the time he did, Senna had put his foot down and opened up a 2-second gap. Prost closed up a little, but as the race approached 2/3 distance, he seemed to have accepted second place and was keeping station a second or so behind the Lotus. Alboreto finally gave up after being in and out of the pits several times, while Lauda was continuing to have gearbox problems and had now lost third to De Angelis once more and was being rapidly caught by Johansson. The Swede was passed soon enough and chasing down De Angelis in the Lotus still. Meanwhile, Mansell, Boutsen and Cheever were having a cracking battle over 7th, mostly off camera, but Senna was now approaching to lap them. As Senna came through, Boutsen had got ahead of the others and was able to get a bit of a tow from the Lotus that helped him to break away from the battle, and the Belgian was able to nip through into 6th as Piquet moved over to let Senna lap him. Meanwhile, Johansson had caught up to De Angelis and was clearly being held up as the Lotus driver stuck tenaciously to his line, just as he had against Alboreto earlier, and up front Prost was rapidly dropping back, now 9 seconds behind Senna and only 7.5 ahead of the De Angelis-Johansson scrap. The pair came up behind Boutsen and Piquet, who were still dicing over 6th, and themselves lapping Ghinzani and Isella, who got smartly out of the way. Piquet took Boutsen for 6th at the end of Tamburello, and then Johansson took his chance at the Tosa hairpin, going around the outside and then rubbing wheels with the Lotus as he tried not to run into the arrows. It was dicey for a moment, but he made it work, to the accompaniment of a full-throated roar from the crowd. With 10 laps to go, Prost had Johansson bearing down on him and put his foot down a bit, gaining a couple of seconds on Senna, but still didn't look like challenging for the lead, as Senna continued untroubled towards his second win and Chiva pulled over with yet another Alfa Romeo engine failure. Johansson was not hanging around and rapidly caught and then passed Prost, to a cheer they could probably have heard in Stockholm, and if the Tollman team, still kicking their heels at home with no tyres, were watching, they might take a crumb of comfort from 2 of their 1984 drivers now running 1st and 2nd. With 4 laps to go, Senna led by 10 seconds, with Johansson and Prost a second apart, then De Angelis another 4 back, Piquet 5th and Boutsen 6th, having both passed Lauda, who was still struggling with his gearbox. Tombe was 8th, then Mansell, Brundle and Warwick. As Senna came round to lap the remaining Williams, he suddenly slowed dramatically. Johansson surged past into the lead as Ayrton's Renault coughed to a halt out of fuel. The bumper crowd went absolutely berserk. So, a very unlikely win for Johansson in just his 12th Grand Prix and his second for Ferrari from 14th on the grid. No, because he too ran out of fuel, having only led the race for half a lap, Prost surging through to break Tifosi hearts. The Tag engine was famous for its good fuel consumption, and there seemed little chance of it running dry, and it didn't. Piquet also ran dry, but Prost cruised the last couple of laps to take the checkered flag ahead of De Angelis, with Thierry Boutsen also running out of fuel on the start-finish straight. Taking a leaf out of Nigel Mansell's book, he hopped out and pushed it over the line, and luckily for him, he was a full lap ahead of the next man and managed to keep 3rd place in the process, a first podium visit for the quiet young man. Prost's McLaren ran dry on the slowing down lap, as Johansson walked in all smiles to receive the plaudits of the Tifosi. So Prost, De Angelis and Boutsen took to the podium, with Tombe, Lauda and Mansell taking the other points places, and the only other cars on the track except for Ghinzani's Isella, 14 laps adrift and not classified after numerous stops for technical issues. But the drama wasn't over yet. After the champagne had been sprayed and the fans were on their way home, the scrutineers had finally dragged Prost's McLaren off from the other side of the circuit, had weighed it and showed it was underweight by 2 kilos. After some frantic rechecking and recalibrating, and a new set of scales at Ron Dennis's insistence, the McLaren was disqualified, and so Elio De Angelis had his second career race win after not leading a single lap, which also put him in the lead of the Drivers' Championship heading to the next race in Belgium. It was the first time Lotus had led both championships since 1978. Thierry Boutsen would be going to his home race on a high after being bumped up to 2nd place, and Patrick Tombe had once again salvaged a podium finish for the Works Renault team, despite a very disappointing performance overall.